Welcome, everybody. We are going to talk about a billion guns versus a billion nucleotides. Of course, this is a citizen science project that was incorporated into the game Borderlands 3. And I am not a scientist, but today I'm with some scientists. I'm an entertainer, and I think that it's been a privilege and a thrill to be connected with the scientific community to figure out how we can find the nexus between entertainment and discovery. Use the fact that we have literally millions of people playing video games to help in our scientific pursuits. And so today I want to introduce some of our esteemed panelists who are going to discuss this topic with us. And let us start with Rob Knight, who is the founding director for the Center for Microbiome Innovation and a professor of pediatrics and computer science and engineering at US San Diego. Rob?
Thanks, Andy. Delighted to be here. And this is really fascinating.
Outstanding. I'd also like to introduce Jerome, who's associate professor of computer science at McGill University.
Hi, Ronnie. Glad to be here and being able to share this our experience along this journey that is just at the beginning, I hope. And that's and it was a pleasure to be discussing that with you all today.
Outstanding. And finally, let me introduce Attila, who is the CEO of Massively Multiplayer Online Science, MMOS. Attila.
Hi, Randy. Thank you for the introduction. It's really great to be here, especially that I think this is the very first panel that we're all together more than a year after launching this very interesting project.
It is astonishing to launch this effort during a pandemic, and it's so great to be here with all of you guys. You know, it has been a long road. We launched it over a year ago, but it actually began much earlier than that. And I wonder, Attila, if you can take us back to the beginning of what you started with MMOS and what your mission is and how we came to meet.
Yes, absolutely. So it's actually a much longer story. Sort of reminds us how time flies. It was 6 years ago, I think, when we first met. So MMOS is a small Swiss startup that we founded around a very specific core idea. And the core idea was to take crowdsourced citizen science microtasks and integrate them with AAA major video games. And the reason why we wanted to do that, because we wanted to solve the engagement problem that citizen science faces. Because people usually like the idea of citizen science, they like the idea that they can help science, help progress science, but in reality, oftentimes we ask people to do repetitive things, which for many becomes very quickly boring. And we said that why don't we go to the masters of engagement, why don't we go to game developers and game designers and ask them to create the experience for the players, for the users, and also to let these experiences enter in their virtual world, and so we can tap into this amazing resource, which is their player community of hundreds of thousands or often millions of players. So that was the core idea. And then during the last 5 years, we set up two major projects. One was with the CCP, Project Discovery, EVE Online, where we are now running the third iteration, also together with Jerome. And when we're talking about Borderlands science, as I was mentioning, we met 6 years ago at GDC.
Was it 6?
Yeah, I think it was 6 years ago, and,
Yes.
and we had a early morning coffee where I had nothing, no proof that this is going to work. I was just hopefully, I hope that's how you remember it. I was there with shiny eyes and I was trying to explain how this is important when we should do it, and you immediately committed to the project.
I remember that meeting well, and your thesis instantly animated me. I am an entertainer, but I love science and I love the progress. Fundamentally, I'm a meliorist who believes that we can make a better world tomorrow because people are going to make it better. But we have to do the work. We have to do the work. And while I've dedicated my life to entertainment, nothing thrills me more than that some of us are better than me and will commit our lives to furthering our species' efforts through scientific advancement and understanding our reality and how to manipulate it to make it better for us. And that's what brought us together. And of course, I am Randy Pitchford. I'm the founder of the Gearbox Entertainment Company and creator of a video game known as Borderlands, which has been fortunate enough to get a lot of people interested in playing Borderlands games. And so Attila and I began this 6 years ago, this idea to incorporate citizen science into Borderlands. And that culminated in a project that is only possible because of the incredible work from Microsetta and with the support of McGill University to do Borderlands science. So we're going to talk about Borderlands science today. Before we do, I'm going to play a short video that introduces what Borderlands science is and how it works. We'll start that right now.
Hey folks, this is Mayim Bialik, actor, PhD scientist, researcher, and your favorite person. Today, I'm here to talk to you about video games and science, and how we can grab both by their necks and make them kiss, consensually. Long story short, by playing Borderlands 3, you can contribute to real-world scientific research, as in data that helps real people in meat space. Speaking of meat, did you know that more than half the cells in our bodies are alien? Only 43% of our cells are of human origin. The rest belong to foreign microbes. These microbes have a massive impact on our body's health. The more we study microbes, the more we can learn about the accumulation of meat and existential terror that is the human body. These microbes are made up of DNA, just like us. Each microbe has its own special DNA signature, and similar species of microbes have similar DNA. If we could sequence all the different species of microbes found in the human body, which, remember, make up more than half of the cells in our body, we'd learn a ton about ourselves. To that end, the Microsetta Initiative collected tens of thousands of samples of, to use the scientific term, doo-doo. Extracted the DNA of the microbes inside and sequenced it. Now we just need to organize this data. Unfortunately, though computers excel at certain tasks like crunching numbers or tracking down specific pornography, they're not so good at organizing DNA information. See, different species of microbes have similar but not quite identical DNA. That means mapping their sequences can be kind of ambiguous. The computer makes lots of small mistakes that can corrupt downstream analysis. Which brings us back to video games! So, we've got several million sequences that are each 150 nucleotides long that are riddled with small errors from the computer analysis. How can we get rid of all these errors? With your help! We've taken the millions of DNA sequences and broken them down into bite-sized puzzles that you can play and solve inside Borderlands 3. And try not to think about the fact that the DNA came from human excrement when I use phrases like bite-sized. By playing Borderlands science inside Borderlands 3, you'll be directly helping our scientists organize and compare this dung data. The game is simple. You'll be confronted with different strands of DNA, each made up of individual tiles. It's your job to place as many of these tiles as possible in their appropriate row while matching the colors. It's not always possible to line everything up perfectly, but that's okay. By playing the game and matching the sequences, you'll also be identifying the errors in our computer analysis and helping scientists across the planet build a better algorithm for the future. And since all this research is open access, the entire scientific community will benefit from it. This research could directly lead to a universal catalog of all known microbes, which could lead to new breakthroughs in food, medicine, exercise. The sky's the limit. And it all starts with you playing a video game. But if the pursuit of knowledge isn't enough of an encouragement to sort through virtual butt microbes, then fear not. Playing Borderlands science earns you in-game currency you can spend on booster items for your characters. Oh, and this is all totally free. Just activate the Borderlands science machine on Sanctuary 3 and sort some gut microbes.
So we did it. We're now living in the aftermath of having created Borderlands science, and we can understand what impact it has had on the Microsetta Initiative effort and on the goals of promoting and creating citizen science projects. And it's been quite amazing. I think it's sort of, I think it exceeded all of our expectations. It definitely exceeded mine. We are in a world today where we've had over 2 million active participants in Borderlands Science that have completed puzzles. We have some players, the top 5 weekly participants since launch have contributed more than 3,200 hours of effort into the citizen science in Borderlands Science. And we have collected over 81 million puzzle solutions from real players, providing data for this initiative. And that accounts for more than 180 years of game time spent within Borderlands Science. We've done 180 years worth of scientific work in less than 1 year as a consequence of this strategy of citizen science. But what does this mean? So, Rob, maybe if you can unmute yourself, maybe you can tell us what data from poop actually helps. How does this help medical research? How does this help our scientific goals?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you saw in the video, we're starting to find out an incredible amount about the microbial side of ourselves, where more than half the cells in what we think of as our bodies, and more than 99% of the genes are microbial in origin, not human in origin. And it's just amazing to consider that. And what we're finding is that they have an impact on all kinds of different aspects of our health and our lives. So you'd expect microbes in your gut to be linked to things like inflammatory bowel disease and other disorders of the gut, which they are. But it's more surprising to find that they're linked to other conditions like diabetes and obesity that are metabolic in origin. And also, we're even learning how microbes in the gut affect our brain, including conditions like autism, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, even Alzheimer's disease, where we have a large project that's tied in with the Microsetta Initiative called the Alzheimer's Gut Microbiome Project, where we're looking at how the microbes and the metabolites that they produce, the chemicals they release into our bodies, interact with our diets to explain why some people stay healthy long into old age, whereas others start to decline in cognitive function. And understanding all these relationships, and more importantly, not just detecting them, but learning to control them, relies on having a good, accurate readout of the microbes in a particular person's gut. And again, as you heard in the video, the way we get that is through the poop, which is an incredibly sensitive source of information that right now most of us just flush away.
Outstanding, thank you. To me, the fact that this even can happen is just a miracle. But I wonder what, maybe Attila or maybe even Jerome, how did you guys think to connect this particular initiative to Borderlands, and why us? Is it just a matter of commercial reach, or the fact that my team and I were willing to do it, or what are the criteria that we can use to connect these commercial projects with the scientific goals, and how did you connect this particular scientific goal with Borderlands specifically?
So I after 5 years, I'm able to sort of define some criteria of what type of games we're looking for. So obviously we're looking for games where there is a substantial number of players, because we're processing large databases and we need a lot of input. I think what is special about these projects and why we became successful is that we didn't approach game companies with a fixed idea or a fixed agenda, but we always start a discussion. So we just come with the overall concept, and we sit down, we try to understand the game, we try to propose some research topics which we think would work in the game, and then together with game designers and researchers, in an iterative process, we find a perfect match, and then the actual game design starts. Now, as for how I actually contacted you, it was funny because I was not in the game industry at all when I started this project. So when we had this idea, I said that I have to find people who would make this happen. And so I contacted you because I knew that you're about Homeworld, and I thought that maybe Homeworld would be a good fit. That was just an idea, and I saw that it's in the Gearbox family, so I sent you an email, and miraculously you responded. So that's how we got in touch. But I think Borderlands was a major milestone in the history of this whole project. So oftentimes when we talked about project discovery and EVE Online, people said that it's EVE Online. EVE is special. 99% of the players are science buffs. It's easy to sell science, scientific minigame to them. Now Borderlands is a huge, diverse audience. And I think it was pretty amazing that you managed to integrate a scientific minigame that became very popular for this diverse audience.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
go, please, Jerome.
Yeah, if I can add on top of that, I think that it's what makes it very important. It's we wanted indeed to at the very beginning of the session here, you're mentioning that you're working in entertainment, working in science, but ultimately these things don't have to be separated, because what we observe across the course of humanity is like scientists become more specialized, try to work on the thing, but they tend to be more disconnected from the society in general. And I think this initiative was very important in the sense that it brings us back these things together, because science is fun. The first thing that if you speak with scientists, the first thing it tells you, I'm doing that because it's fun and I enjoy it. So there's no reason for what things shouldn't go together, and for the benefit of everyone. And if I want also to add on what Attila was mentioning, so very early also I started discussing with Rob about engaging the project he did with TMI and American Gut in games. Why? Because the Microsetta Initiatives and American Gut are citizen science projects engaging people. And if you want to engage millions of people doing science, it has to be something that speaks to everyone and where people can be engaged by themselves. And this is why also we thought initially that bringing the idea of bringing science into video games also should link to very important problems where people are interested to participate and contribute in many ways, analyzing, but also providing the data. So I think it was really the convergence of many different aspects of the project that make it very successful and that needed to happen this way.
That's outstanding. So, okay, Jerome, as a computational biologist, then are you noticing that it's working? Does this effort and like the effort with EVE, is that increasing the acceptance of video games as a tool for research amongst the scientific community?
So I can take the beginning of the answer, and perhaps Rob can give us a bit more description about on the applied side and the impact he has on the microbiome and how it can change things. But indeed, first we didn't start from nothing. So as earlier, we had a project called Philo, where we've been able to collect enough data to prove that the approach has potential. But unfortunately, didn't have the critical mass of people contributing to make a difference. This is why basically we needed the audience and the help of Borderlands, because you have the critical mass of participants that can engage and solve this problem. Because gamers are very smart; they can solve a very difficult problem very precisely if we give them the tools to do it. And so by doing this, we've been able to collect, as you mentioned earlier, up to 80 million of solutions so far. And just for the record, in the first half day of Borderlands, when we launched it, we collected more than 5 times what we did in 10 years with Philo. So that gives you just an idea about the difference of scale we're discussing here. And what we've been seeing so far, indeed, is like we are able to improve according to different metrics the alignment we start with. So that's very encouraging. And Rob perhaps can speak a bit more about what we can do with this alignment. But also what we want to do is like from this solution is we want to learn new methods. So we want to apply all the machine learning techniques to try to learn what humans are doing better than the current programs and build a more creative algorithm, if you want, that is able to better analyze the data. And maybe now, Rob, you can tell us a bit more about what we would expect from this analysis.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for a long time scientists have been inspired by the success of games like Foldit and Eterna and Philo in terms of harnessing the human brain's ability to recognize patterns and having those games be fun. But the scale of this effort, I mean, 2 million people, that's unprecedented, and that's getting a lot of attention in the scientific community. So then we have to prove that it works. And I think the particular excitement about this project is that the game has been decomposed into small sections of work that rely on the human brain's ability to detect these patterns even better than current AI techniques can do, but still make it fun. And what we're doing essentially is we're building a library of all of the kinds of microbes that are in the gut. And what people are doing in this project is improving the classification system in that library. So each of the microbes can be very precisely classified and related to other microbes. And this gives us really nice ways of evaluating the tasks. So we can look at properties of the alignment, how the sequences are compared to each other, properties of the phylogenetic tree, so how those sequences relate to each other in evolutionary terms. And then the final proof of the pudding is in terms of classifier accuracy. So can we tell if you're healthy or if you have a disease like inflammatory bowel disease or Parkinson's or diabetes or any of the other things that are linked to the microbiome? And then the really exciting next step is, can we not just read out your current state, but can we predict the future? So using the same technology, we've worked with cohorts where the people donated their stool for science up to 20 years ago. And if we could tell you from your stool sample today, are you going to be healthy in 20 years' time, or are you going to have some disease that's linked to the microbiome? And could we do something that helps you prevent getting that disease, whether it's something that's a drug or a lifestyle modification or diet or what? That would all be very exciting. And that's what we're moving towards. And because we have these historical data sets, it's extremely verifiable to ask, did the improvement in the alignments lead to better classifier accuracy, not just for what people were experiencing when they donated their sample, but what happens to them going forward?
Awesome. Now, my understanding, and please correct me if I have this wrong, but I believe that the Microsetta Institute has actually started to collect data that relates to this pandemic that we've been going through, to the COVID-19 virus. Can we imagine where we can actually activate our someday have the kinds of technology that can activate our video game players to help with problems like the pandemic as a consequence of us doing this literally during the pandemic we're living through now?
Yeah, absolutely. And that day is right now. So one of the cohorts I mentioned, FinRisk 2002, what we have is we have stool samples from nearly 20 years ago. And one of the things we can do using this exact same technology is ask, can we improve our ability to predict from those from when someone crapped in a cup for science nearly 20 years ago? Can we predict whether they got COVID now? And that's working fairly well already. What we're trying to figure out at the moment is what are the linkages between bacteria in the gut and whether or not you'll be infected with SARS-CoV-2, which is a virus that causes COVID, or whether you develop full-blown COVID disease. And a lot of the same risk factors for COVID, like obesity, hypertension. Let's see, the several other diabetes is another key one. These are also diseases that are linked to changes in the gut microbiome. So being able to figure out what are those specific changes in the kinds of bacteria you have that might put you at greater risk, and therefore you might take more precautions, but also trying to understand how you might be able to prevent or treat COVID, not by targeting the virus itself, but by targeting the bacteria and targeting the bacterial products, the things that they do. That's a very exciting area of research right now. So already these improved alignments are improving our ability to do those kinds of prediction tasks.
It just seems to lay people, I think, miraculous that we can use data at this scale to be predictive. But it's not miraculous all. It's literally just science. And unfortunately, because we're talking about huge amounts of data, that so far computational approaches to analyzing it provide limitations that human minds don't have. This is a really cool strategy, and I'm just absolutely thrilled to be a part of it on the Vanguard. And my hope is that by us doing what we're doing today, by talking about it, that we can inspire more relationships between entertainment and citizen science, and maybe we can not merely solve more of the problems that we're facing today, but be more predictive about the kinds of problems that we could be facing, and that allows us to consider preventativeness. So I'm just absolutely thrilled to be able to support you and your work, Rob, with the players at Borderlands, creating all of this data. I can't help but wonder, what else can we do? Now, it's probably the case, and I don't want to be put on record as announcing anything today, but it's probably the case that the Gearbox Entertainment Company is going to make more video games. And it's probably the case that we could be making more Borderlands video games, and it might even be the case that we're in development on such things as we speak. What more can we do? What other projects can we get involved in? And this is for anybody on the panel, really, and maybe each of you might have a comment about this. And then what more can I do and can we do to inspire other folks to jump in? Whoever wants to take that first.
Well, I can address it from a science perspective. So the alignment task that's being done here is really important, really the basis for classifying bacteria. The same sort of thing can be done for viruses, including coronaviruses, so the group that SARS-CoV-2 is in. And we're working on starting to feed in some of those alignments now, which doesn't require any changes to the code, just changes to the data set. But there's a whole lot of other different kinds of pattern recognition and pattern classification tasks involved in finding out which sequences have particular kinds of functions, so act as enzymes in different ways. Things like being able to classify the whole pattern of the microbial community that is associated with one disease or another, and understanding how to make those interesting, understanding how to make those other tasks interesting in a way that millions of people would want to play them in the context of the game. I think that's a really inspiring challenge, and I think as examples of success like this start to be widely known, and as it becomes easier and easier to develop new tasks into this kind of framework, we'll see a tremendous improvement in the ability to harness the enthusiasm of citizen science citizen science participants who can participate by playing a game rather than downloading terabytes of data to their home machine and working out how to use open source software aimed at scientists, not aimed at gamers, to figure it out. So I think the potential is just tremendous.
I agree. Jerome, what are your thoughts on that, and what new projects can we imagine from your perspective?
Well, my thoughts. So first, probably I can just. So my research actually was really developed and focusing on making a game from science. So how can we? I didn't want to develop necessarily. We saw a lot of citizen science activity, but every time, even if they were presented at the game, I was not fully satisfied to make it really as simple and as engaging as a Tetris. And so we tried with that beginning with Philo, didn't reach it yet. This is why basically the collaboration with Gearbox was so amazing, because you have an amazing game designer that basically revisited everything and being able to bring to life something I wanted, imagined, but I couldn't pinpoint exactly what should be done and how it has to be done. But I think everything is there. Like if we put enough work on it, try to understand, try to find a good compromise between the what is scientifically relevant and what could be gamified to make it more accessible by anyone. The whole research we've been conducting is really to make all these essential scientific tasks accessible to everyone. And once we reach this, so we did for the alignment, but as Rob was mentioning, there's many other ones in terms of image recognition, pattern recognition that can be implemented. We should, as you also mentioned, try to be able to have this in every video game, in a sense that we should be able to all have a way to contribute and participate to this. So we want, and that's the part of the work we start to do with Attila too, try to visit all potential problems, discuss with a lot of different scientists, and build this type of portfolio of different projects, try to understand what's the potential for every game, for every problem, and see where are the best match. And this is the core expertise of MMOS that Attila launched together. And by joining Attila, I've been able to bring a bit more science expertise into the venture. But probably Attila could speak a bit more about what we're trying to build here to be able to make it this as a common thing to do into any video games.
Thank you. And I will point out that in the chat, Jerome pasted a link to our joint paper in the scientific journal Nature. I mean, I can speak on behalf of game developers. It's not every day that a person like me can have a credit with the scientific journal. And although I can be exceptionally proud of the investment and the commitment and the work that I've done to make sure that Borderlands science can be a reality, I will have to confess that the heavy lifting on the science in that article was not me. But I feel like I get to participate, and I feel like I'm helping, and I think we are. And this is a gift that the game developers can feel when we're talking about games for change and the larger concept here with this conference that joins us all together. I can't think of a more profound change than to create something that invites millions of people to be contributing real data that can be actually valuable to our scientific pursuits. And we've proved it with Borderlands science. But of course, this is just one vector of an infinite range of ideas that could contribute to different scientific endeavors. Attila, maybe for a moment, if we can get even wider than the advantages of thinking about gut microbes and our science and research into how these work and how they're built and how they relate to one another. Maybe you can, for a moment, pull us a bit wider about some wider ideas with how science and video games can connect that might inspire someone to get involved that isn't yet involved.
Yeah, it was really great listening to you now, because I think this kind of evangelist work that you are doing, that you actually made it happen, and you talk to the game industry, to other people in the game industry, that this should be done by others. I think it's super important. What I see right now is that as things are, and as the state of AI and machine learning is at the moment, we still have a chance to contribute as humans with our pattern recognition abilities. It's a question for how long, but for now we are very valuable. And so this is a very important work. Also, I would mention that this project was not only about collecting valuable data and input for research, but it was also a unique opportunity for science to talk to communities, and communities that are usually really hard to reach with conventional methods of science communication. It was not even about, because that video in itself, it was amazing that it had been seen by I guess, millions of players and millions of people on YouTube. But also that we can invite players to actually participate and do it and have a first-person experience of what the research project looks like. I think it's a really unique opportunity to talk about science, to tell what researchers tell what they're doing, why is it important, and why we should participate. In my vision is that, I always thought about this as more games we have in this system or in this citizen science platform, the better. Then we have more access to more people, and basically we're building a huge human computation engine that can serve scientific needs. So that's the vision, and that's why I feel it's important that you are here on this panel, you talk about it, and you express that you're very happy with it as a project. And actually, I would pass back this question to you, is that I can imagine that when I presented, although I don't remember how exactly 5 or 6 years ago, the idea can be intriguing, and it's a very interesting concept. But as a CEO and the founder of a game company, what other components you needed to justify to actually make it happen in Borderlands?
I have to be honest, Attila. When I made the commitment, it was impossible to justify from a commercial perspective. I think that I believed in your mission, and so by taking the risk, what I hope, and this is one of the reasons why I'm here today, is that we could demonstrate a commercially responsible reason for doing this. And in fact, the consequences, I think, bear that out. There was no comparison before that could allow me to justify this effort from a purely commercial reason alone. But today, now I have tools. We have evidence of audience members that we attracted because of this work. We were able to generate conversations amongst people that normally we don't have access to, that have now new interest in video games. Obviously, the interest of massively multiplayer online science is to take the existent video game players and see if we can put them to work towards citizen science goals. And as an entertainer, my goal is to see if I can reach more people than ever and see how much I can gratify them. And I think this accomplishes both, adding something to both of those metrics. Through citizen science, yes, we were able to take a huge number of our Borderlands players and put them to work, and that's incredible for the scientific goal. But we were also able to speak to audiences we'd never spoken to before. There's literally an article in Nature that's a scientific journal, which is this. I don't know if this is the most coveted demographic amongst entertainers, but it is one that we've never spoken to before. Or actually, it's been quite some time. We published a paper with some artificial intelligence work we did in 2005 for Brothers in Arms. So 15 years between our ability to touch the scientific community, and I think we can do better there. But even more interesting, in addition to like speaking to audiences that we haven't spoken to before, that other metric is about the sense of gratification that we get, which is what an entertainer's goal is. We're trying to create joy and happiness and surprise and delight, but there's this other word that I think encompasses all of that, which is really about gratification, which is the purpose of entertainment. And what could be more gratifying than having fun and knowing that we are doing something good for society, doing something good for our species? This is the more we can figure this out as entertainers, I think the more opportunity there is for entertainment and progress to join each other hand in hand. Entertainment historically has been seen as a distraction to progress. From the very first moments that our ancestors painted images on the cave walls, every minute we were spending looking at that art, we weren't out collecting food that would help us survive the next winter. When we had finally figured out how to make words and language, and then incredible innovations like the printing press, I can imagine the parents at the time, you don't want to read, kid. You're spending all that time in those books. We need you out plowing the fields. And of course, we know how that generation gap progresses from recorded music to movies. Don't watch TV was the thing that my parents wanted to impress upon me, because if I was watching television, I wasn't developing. I wasn't outside becoming stronger, and I wasn't studying or becoming smarter. And today, that generation gap extends to video games. We almost feel that we should keep our children from playing video games because we think it's going to either harm them or prevent them from developing and progressing and contributing something. And that does not have to be the case. And Borderlands science proves that it does not have to be the case. All of us who have played video games know that we are developing, in fact, through this interactive nature of them. But few of us are being so direct that I am with my child. It's like, no, play more video games. I want you to play more video games. And I feel best about it when it's something like Borderlands science. I think that's something we can all use as a tool, as a talking point. I wanted to come back to this specific project there's this dual purpose that we had in what we crafted here. One was a demonstration and a proof point. I just spoke a bit to that, but the other is the actual value of this stuff. And it's kind of interesting because we can look at the game and I think if our game designers, if we did anything, we made it accessible, fun, and actually kind of simple, which makes me wonder, couldn't we train an AI to do this? Did we need this to do this work? Like, how do we figure out that separation between work that's necessary for a human mind and work that we could approximate? And how does this program that we did maybe teach us more about how to solve more of these problems computationally? Maybe Rob or Jerome can speak to that a little bit.
Sure, I'd be happy to say a little bit about that. So you're absolutely right. We shouldn't have humans doing calculations that an AI could do just because they're fun. If we could solve them in a second with AI rather than having people play endlessly to do those tasks. Our precise plan with this is to use the human generation training set to see if we can train an AI to achieve equal or superior performance. But we need that human generation training set in order to be able to do that, because in the field of sequence alignment, people have tried a lot of AI techniques dating back to neural network approaches in the 1980s, and still they haven't achieved the performance that human alignment does. The other thing I should say in terms of extending this, we've talked a lot about the medical aspects of this research, but microbes do a lot of other things in the environment, including in industrial processes, ranging from wastewater treatment to making different kinds of food products, as well as being involved in things like climate change through altered carbon and nitrogen cycling and so forth. So from a social responsibility angle, being able to take this technology that we're initially applying in medical research and applying it to environmental problems as well is certainly both very plausible and what we'll be doing in subsequent phases of this.
That's exciting. Jerome, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I just want to say more an anecdote, actually, that when we designed Borderlands Science, I remember we had a lot of discussion. I was going back and forth between Montreal and Quebec to discuss with game designers, we do things. What was very interesting from my perspective as well is like we had to deconstruct the problem to understand what was important, what was not important, and to be able to build a game around it. And at the end, I think when we build the game Borderlands Science, that also enables me as a scientist to understand what was important, what was the essence of the problem we're trying to solve. So I knew it was a problem that was very hard computationally and so on and so forth. We had different framework that would be designed, but we had to revisit everything from the bottom to the top. And I think at the end, the way we present the puzzle make it even more relevant for science to some extent, and provide us even more information about what the range of solution can be reached, where people tend to converge to agree together there is a solution is more valuable than another, even if we don't have an objective function, a scoring function that can be mathematically formulated. Because essentially what we try to extract from all this is a common wisdom of people and see what cannot be embedded into a mathematical formula, but can still be found by human collectively and perhaps not as an individual. And this is where after when you reach this, when you have the data set, and I never emphasize enough how important this data set may be for the future and to let us understand better the problem itself. But once you have the data set, now we're starting thinking how we can use the machine learning technologies to aggregate all these to make something actionable and accelerate research further. And that all comes from the fact that because I had as a scientist to discuss with a game designer, we had to revisit and all the problem and going back from scratch. And I think that this melding between the two different expertise is probably the most powerful experience that we had with Borderlands Science.
Yeah, It occurred to me that um, when we collect this level of data, going back to that earlier idea of what can AI do and what can't it do, I think this is part of it. You said something, Rob, earlier that was really interesting to me when you said that there's been a lot of work towards trying to get AI to do this, but humans are still outperforming the AIs. And I wonder if we're going to use some of this effort to learn why that's the case. Like if the data can also teach us why humans are better at this, and maybe that leads to making the AI better. Are we bringing about the singularity? I don't want to slow us down. I want to go faster though. But it's kind of funny how my brain went there. I wanted to share. I think one of the cool things we did was we also kind of made it. We made it. I don't know what the right word is. I'm going to use the word sexy. And I'm going to share the link from the Borderlands page. The game obviously has to be good, and figuring that out, Jerome, we're with working with you guys and going back and forth on that obviously was key, but it's also like how that's promoted, and for those that don't know, by putting that retro inside the physical game world in 3D as you're walking around it in an almost virtual reality. You're using your 2D screen, of course, but you are the eyes of your character when you walk around the world of Borderlands, and you feel like you are in a sense of place. And to wander into the lab and see that retro arcade cabinet in there, it made it really cool, and it made players want to interact with that and experience that. And I really want that cabinet now in the real world. And this is something that we haven't announced before. I wanted to share. We're working with a partner to actually construct Borderlands science as a real thing that lives in the real world. We've got a partner that's building a physical recreation of those cabinets. And I think there's 10 in construction right now, and we hope to drop them maybe in some different museums or other places that are friendly to science that will actually work. So without having to buy Borderlands or play it at home, someone in one of these environments can now be exposed to Borderlands science. So if you click on the link I just linked there and you scroll down and you see that picture of the cabinet, there will soon be that cabinet in the real world that we can actually interact with and works, and you can play Borderlands science on those cabinets. And just last week I got a photograph from the place that's building these right now. We don't know how to build stuff in the real world. We only build digital things, and it's such an incredible feeling to see this work that we've all manifested virtually actually now being manifested in the real world. So I hope that happens, and maybe that could help as well. I wanted to throw it back to Attila for a second, because for me this started when I met you, and you were the guy that created this idea of massively multiplayer online science and this company to pursue this effort. And you've really dedicated a huge portion of your life, and you have once you stumbled upon this, it seems like you can't stop. What's next for you? What's next for massively multiplayer online science?
Yeah, so we're continuing what we have done. So a big part of my job was to go to these conferences like GDC and other DevCon, Gamescom, and talk about what we are doing, and actually get other game developers on board. Even after 5 years, there are many game developers who haven't heard about what we are doing. So that's an important point. We're working on a new major project, which I can't announce yet, but hopefully soon we can make an announcement about that. I'm really looking forward. Again, that's something that I cannot announce. Maybe you can, but I'm looking forward to what are the next steps together, because this first kickoff was so successful that I'm really hoping to continue to work together with the amazing brains that they're working at Gearbox. And also at Gearbox Studio in Quebec City, and also with Jérôme, we're trying to sort of set up a more formal body inside the academia for this project, and try to find some more sustainable funding, because one big challenge of this project is that the funding logic of research, our efforts to fund our work at MMOS, and how games work, and how fast certain decisions happen, and how quickly you have to follow that, is not necessarily easy to solve. So with Jérôme, we thought that the only solution for that is to set up a body who can prepare everything. So if the opportunity arises with the game companies, then we can immediately jump on it and make such collaborations possible.
Outstanding.
Yeah. But perhaps what I can say to this,
I feel like you were trying to prompt me to announce something that I'm not ready to announce, but I will say I'm very excited about taking the experience and doing that next step. And we're absolutely doing that. But I also think that there's going to be some of us, like I was, motivated by the curiosity and by the sort of ethical value, I guess, that I feel we have in taking this power and applying it towards some kind of progress for our species. But I know that the way the world works is our limited resources constrain everything, and that's why we invented money, to figure out how to deal with the exchange and the prioritization of our limited resources. And when we can create a commercial effort that can generate value, it's easier for that commitment of resources to go into it. And I want to find a way to make it not merely ethically motivating and satisfying to curiosity, but actually commercially responsible to do this kind of work. And I can make a great argument with what we've already proven with Borderlands science, but I don't have that argument supported by enough empirical data to absolutely demonstrate it, that we definitely received a commercial benefit. I can't prove that. I feel that there was some commercial benefit, but I can't prove it. I want to take a step that beyond what we're already talking about, that proves that part of it as well. And I think that can be a catalyst for a massive revolution with all entertainment, not just video games, because all those people taking risk, they can't do it without feeling like they're going to get something out of it. They have an obligation to their own missions. So I'm really looking forward to that. Jérôme, I feel like I interrupted you, that you were about to say something, and because you were about to say it, it was likely going to be profound. So I want to stop for a second and pass it back to you.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I was just drinking your word. Actually, what you were saying was much more interesting. What I wanted to say. I just want to emphasize one again that I really see that science, entertainment are two different things, and just games is the cement that can perhaps build a society of tomorrow, where science and what we do during our spare time that potentially will increase because we have a more automated task and we have more time for ourselves to do things that count for us. I really truly believe that games can be the what makes all this vision for a new society that will make it possible. Perhaps it is just another question I wanted to ask myself too. Is like but related to the how do you could see so what the impacts of a game may had at because the Microsetta Initiative was already a citizen science project where people were contributing by themselves to providing the data and to the scientists. I was interested also to have from you, Randy, and Rob, basically perspective, how do you think that the contribution can go the other way from saying how the game can help also this classical citizen science project to grow and become more powerful in the future?
Do you want to take that, Rob?
Sure. Well, I think there's two routes to that. One is by improving the technology that the citizen science project is based on and delivering better results to the participants. That'll automatically expand the value of the projects to the participants and also generate additional interest in the scientific community. The other piece of it, though, is I think the platform that especially things like Borderlands provide with the publicity and the large community engagement might make a lot of people aware of the project and interested in participating in other ways, like, for example, contributing samples in the case of the Microsetta Initiative, or getting engaged in the science at other levels. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to build on this kind of success.
I love it. I'm absolutely with it, and I'm so glad to have partnered on this project with you, and I'm excited for the potential of new partnerships. And I wish you every success with other partners as well. I think we need to keep pushing forward with this. We're almost out of time, so I did want to take a minute to share some resources. Of course, if you're curious about Rob's work and the Microsetta Initiative, there's a link to the Microsetta website. And if you're curious about massively multiplayer online science and Attila's work, and maybe you're working with a game that might be a good participant there's a link to MMOS. And if you're curious about the results, we did this press release just 2 months ago about where we stood since the launch of Borderlands Science. And so here's yet a third link that offers that. And I feel like even though we have a lot to brag about and a lot to be proud of, I feel like we're just getting started. And this is just the beginning of a revolution with citizen science using interactive. And I'm very excited to be a part of it. And I hope that all of our audience today enjoyed this information and the what we shared, and I hope you find a way to jump in yourselves. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Jerome. Thank you, Attila. And thank you, participants. Thanks for spending time with us. Cheers.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, Randy. Really excited about this project.